Because of our learning, we should have the base of Migdash immediately. And it should be a refuah shleima for Yechiel Nassim ben Sarah and Aaron David Alevi ben Menucha the Lester. Thank you, Hashem. Okay. Today we get to start a new piece. Yud Beis Amud Aleph V'Liyarakas. It's a little under the middle of the page. Yeah, we learned in the Mishnah. That there's 4 Rosh Hashanahs, and one of them is Echad B'Tishrei. That's the one that we're familiar with, the first of Tishrei. Now, Rosh Hashanah on the first of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah for the years. What did we say years was? We said that was for kings, non-Jewish kings. Yeah, Nisan was the Jewish king. We said for Shemitah and for Yovel. That was a whole discussion. If it goes according to one opinion that Yovel starts Rosh Hashanah, not Yom Kippur. Last thing we learned was Arla, and now we're up to Yerakis for vegetables. It says like this. Tana, we have a brisa. The Mishnah says Yerakis, vegetables. The brisa says Yerakis ula maisris ula nedarim. It has three terms there. Vegetables, maisris, and vows. Someone takes a vow. We'll see what it means in a minute. The Yerakis maininu. When it says over there vegetables, what is it referring to? Well, it says meiser yarek. You see, the real meiser is tirosh. What is it? The gancha tirosh chavitzaracha. Your grain, your wine, and your oil. Rabbinically, it applies also to other things as well. Meiser, you have to tithe, and trees and vegetables is rabbinically you have to tithe. Otherwise, it's just the grapevine and the olive tree, and then grain. So what we're saying here is that there's meiser yerek. You have to take meiser from the vegetables. Okay, the Gemara says, well, hainu meisers. That's meiser also. You said meisers in the brisa, and you said Yerakis. They're both. Now, what we're referring to here is that there has to be a cutoff point when I take meiser from the previous year and when I take meiser from the new year. So Rosh Hashanah would be the cutoff point. So the Rosh Hashanah for the vegetables is Rosh Hashanah, the first of Tishrei. So we're asking, so why do you have to say meiser in Yerakis? The Gemara says Tana de Rabbanan u'Ktani de Raisa. He teaches the rabbinic meiser and he teaches the biblical meiser. Okay. Gemara says, listening to Raisa Bereisha. Shouldn't the biblical one come first? It should say the meisers you're saying is the biblical one. That's the grain, the wine, and the oil. And afterwards should come the vegetables, which that's like an offshoot of the biblical law. You have the rabbinic law. It says, I did the chaviva layaktama. Very interesting. The rabbinic law is the chiddush. The chiddush is what we like. So it says the Jewish people are compared to fish. And interesting thing about the fish is that when it rains, the fish come up to get the droplets of water. So they have as much water as they need. They don't need to go up to get the snow, but they like the chiddush. This is the new water. They want to hear something new. So it says the rabbinic law first. Okay. V'tana didan. What about our Mishnah? It doesn't say actually, the truth is that the Mishnah says meiser behema, right? It doesn't mention Dagan.
It doesn't mention.
Right. Isn't that interesting? It says meiser behema, and that's a machlekes, Echad or Tishrei. And then it says Yerakis. So our Gemara questions that. What's going on? It says, Tana de Rabbanan v'Kolshkin deraisa. We don't need the deraisa to be mentioned specifically, because if you say the Rabbanan, then it's automatically gonna we'll figure out the daraisa. Yeah, based on you say the chiddush, then for sure what would be more understood. Okay, now just two ways of learning this following just two words. I think the easier way goes like this. The listening meiser, why did the brisa say meisreis? If it's referring to the meiser, the biblical meiser, so just say meiser. If it's referring to meiser, I'm not learning like Taisus. That's what you're looking at. There is another way of learning it, but the if you're saying that there's a biblical meiser and a rabbinic meiser, so then meisreis. But in the brisa, you're not. You don't have that. You only have in the brisa. The meiser is only referring to the biblical meiser because he said yirakas.
But what about the meiser?
That's another way of learning this. So the Gemara answers, Echad Meiser Behema, Echad Meiser Dagan. No, it says Meiser because it's referring to Meiser Behema as well in the Brisa. Which opinion holds that Meiser Behema is Rosh Hashanah? The tithing of the animals, the cutoff point is Rosh Hashanah. There was a machlekes, that's Reb Shimon, and who else? Reb Shimon and Reb Elazar. It was a team over there. Yeah, Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon. They said it's Bechad B'Tish. Okay. Okay. Listen to Yerek. That's an interesting question. I don't know the Hebrew grammar about this, but apparently it could have said Yerek means vegetable, as opposed to Yerakais is vegetables. So are there different types of vegetables that you, I'm in Gevix. So it says, yeah, actually there are two types of vegetables, and that's why we're saying it's the cutoff point for the meiser of the vegetables. I know there's a lot of types of vegetables, but there would be a halachic different categories of vegetables is the question. It says, yeah, Trey Gavni Yerek. Ditnan Yerek Hanegad Misha Yagad Vishaina Negad Misha Yamali Asakli. When is the time when you need to take the meiser? When is that? So when it comes to grain, so it was when it was brought into the house. The truma was when the silo was smoothed off. When it was brought into the house, that was the time to take the meiser, or into the courtyard. We learned. What about for vegetables? When is it chayiv in meiser? So vegetables that are tied together, they're sold like in a bundle. So when you make that tie, that means it's the finished product, and you have to take the meiser. Only when it's finished, when the production line is finished. If it's not tied together, then it's when it's filled into a basket, and the basket's filled. Some vegetables are tomatoes or something. It's in a basket. Other things are sold in a bundle. So there's two categories of vegetables. When it's going to be chayiv and meiser, in both of them it doesn't matter. The cutoff point is Rosh Hashanah. Anything that was chayiv before Rosh Hashanah, is part of the Rosh Hashanah. This is the previous year, and anything afterwards. Now there's a nuance here that is a little bit confusing. We really know that it's the time of, as we're going to see in a brisa, it's when you take the vegetable that it's chayiv and meiser. When do you actually give the meiser? That would be when you tie it. When you pick it, it's chayiv and meiser. Yeah, there's something over here that's a little bit confusing. We'll go further, but basically we've answered the Yerakas. Taner Rabbanan, the brisa says, Liket Yerek Erev Rosh Hashanah, Ad Shlei Tava Hashemesh. If you pick the vegetable before Rosh Hashanah, before the sun sets, yeah, you went outside, you wanted to get the simanim, so you get the good vegetables in Rosh Hashanah by night. You're gonna have all the different signs that everything that means good stuff. So v'chazer v'liket mishetavai hashemesh. And then he goes and collects after the sun sets. It's a little problematic. Doesn't sound like he's very frum, but he's picking vegetables after sunset, unless.
Rosh Hashanah is a reference to sunset.
Sunrise is, so coming up sunset.
There's a number of people that use it that way.
Yeah, the question is still there. Why is it?
Usually would say Zarach Hashanah.
Right.
The article says picked by a goy.
Picked by a guy. Okay, that saves us from speaking bad about a Jew. It's picked by a guy. The vegetables picked by a guy. No, Naftali's asking about the phrase of Shemesh, why it means sunset, and come should mean.
Because the sun comes down back to the rest of
I know, but he's asking it should be goes down, not comes down.
Well, it left. Now it's coming back down.
Uh-huh.
When it went, when it goes,
Sort of like Bayal Pare. Right. Okay, I understand. Right.
This is what you wrote me down.
Beautiful sunset. Actually, it's sunrise 38. It's not sunset yet.
That's funny. That's great. Okay. So the rule goes like this: Ein tarmin a meiser mizel zeh. You can't take chumas and meisers one on the other. Why? Because it's a different year. Actually, there's other answers to saying who picked it, because it's already Yom Tov. You're not allowed to pick it. Other answers are that it could be at when it's ready to be picked, when it's ripe to be picked. It doesn't have to actually be picked. That's a possibility also.
Why can't you pick a vegetable?
Oh, we start the heterim of Yom Tov for us only start from Lisha. From in the Malachas, it only starts from the kneading. You can't do harvesting, because harvesting, even though you're saying it's Eichel Nefesh, but harvesting is the Malachas that anything that could have been done before Yom Tov, you can't do on Yom Tov. The harvesting goes onto that category, and then the continuation of those Malachas. Grinding, I think, also is an issue, but then once it comes to kneading, shechting was allowed, but that's further on. We're talking in the Siddur de Pas, in the first 11 malachas of the 39. So the plowing and the planting and the harvesting is all not allowed, because you can do it before Yom Tov. I'm sorry. You have to get meiser anyway. Question is which group, which basket you put it in. Meiser from this year, or the meiser from that year. So, and the reason is because you have to take meiser from each year. Has to be a separate meiser. What are we learning here? That the vegetable goes when it's picked. Yeah, you pick the vegetable in an hour difference. It goes under a different category of which year it is.
Right. You just said you're not hiring it until it's finally rolled.
Yeah.
Or put in the basket or whatever. Then now we're saying it's the picking.
Right.
There could be this between might be picking and eating.
Yeah.
Before you're putting it in, because it's not high muscle, so it doesn't follow.
Yeah. So if you take a look at there's a little. Do you have Taisvus there? On the end of the first of Yud Beis and Aleph, it says Yerek Hanegad Mishiyegad. So Taisvus mentions that. He says regarding when it's considered the finished product, that's going to be when you tie it. Regarding which year it goes under, that's when you pick it. Yeah. Yeah, not only is different mice, different years, which we didn't get into yet, but you can't even take it from you still have to put it under a different, even if it's the same Meiser, but let's say I have 10 vegetables, right? And one of them is from after Rosh Hashanah, once, and 9 are from before. I also can't mix them and say, oh, I have 10, let's take, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we'll get into the different years, like Levi mentioned. Im haisa shnia nechneses l'shlishis. If it's the second year, let's speak this out before we go through it. The 6 years that you take Meiser, and then the 7th year, the land is free for everyone, right? Everyone can take equally. In those 6 years, so the first thing that's taken is Truma. Truma is a gift to the Kayan, and it's actually sanctified. Only the Kayan can eat it. How much do you take? Trei mimeya. 2 Truma, 2%, 2 out of 100. The next thing is Meiser Rishon. You go into the field and you take, well, it's actually, you brought it into the house. You take 10% and you give it to the Levi. When Ezra came back in the second base of Mikdash, there was a problem. The Levium didn't come back, so it was given to the Kayan then. But the Truma went to the Kayan. The Meiser Rishon officially went to the Levi.
Is it 10% after the Truma?
Yeah, after the Truma. No, it's you recalculate after the Truma. 10% of 98, yeah. 9.8 of the produce, yeah, the grain. Okay, after you do that, then you have another 10% that you take of what's left. 10% of what's left. It's called Meiser Sheni. Meiser Sheni, you took to Yerushalayim and you ate it there. What did they call it? The holiday money. You spent it when you went to Yerushalayim. Now, you could exchange it also. However, this Meiser Sheni was only if it's the first or second year of the Shemitah, or the 4th or 5th year of the Shemitah. But the 3rd and the 6th year, that instead of taking that money and using it yourself in Yerushalayim, you had to go give it to the Ani, Meiser Ani. So now we're looking at, well, when I have all of this produce in front of me, I have to determine which year it belongs to. So there's a cutoff point for the year. Is this produce that goes to Yerushalayim? Is this produce that goes to the poor? Because there's a difference between the 2nd year and the 3rd year, and the 4th year, and the 5th year and the 6th year. So let's take a look. Yeah, that's called Meiser Ksafim. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that all goes to
Yeah. Originally, Meiser Ksafim went to the poor. Now we give it to institutions, to anything, doesn't have to be like poor, it could go to, whatever, to the shul. It's also good. Okay. So let's see inside. If it's the 2nd year that's entering the 3rd year, so Shniya Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni, and Shlishis is Meiser Rishon and Meiser Ani. Then you're going to have this difference that you're going to have Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni for the 2nd year, and for the 3rd year it's going to be Meiser Rishon and Meiser Ani. Now the Gemara asks, Minani Mili, how do you know that you don't have Meiser Sheni in the 3rd year? Where's this from? So Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, Yeshua ben Levi is usually quoted is usually saying a pasuk. He's the expert in Agadata, and he teaches us how to learn psukim. Remember the Gemara? There was a Gemara Baba Kama, I think, where he said, "How come it doesn't say Toiv in the Luchos, in the first Luchos? In Yisrei, it doesn't say the word Toiv. What does it say? L'man yitavlach. So it should be good for you. It doesn't say that in the first Luchos. So they tell him, go ask Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. He's the one that knows all of these things. He's the expert in the psukim and Agadata. He is at the top of the Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael, or the bottom of the Tanoim. His father is a student of Rebbe Levi. And then Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi would be. Yeah, that's what we think. Okay. He says like this: when when you'll conclude taking the Meiser of the grain in the third year. So it's not a Meiser. Oh, so he says, hey, very interesting. He finishes off. He says, I don't even know if it says Lamani Tavlach, if it says Lamani Tavlach in the second luchas at all, or if it doesn't say. He said, like, I don't even know. Anyway, Taisus says apparently they don't know the psukim. That's the Taisus over there. But Rebbe Margolius has an essay on this. If you ever saw this, and he says that there's an assumption that in Parshas Yisro is the Luchas Rishonos, and in Parshas V'eschana is the Luchas Shniyos. But that's an assumption. Parshas V'eschana is a repetition of what took place when the Luchas were given Luchas Rishonos. He's saying, I don't know which Luchas it's quoting. Is it quoting the second Luchas? You're thinking that the text of the V'eschanan is the text of the second Luchas? That's Lav Dafka. That could be the text of the first Luchas. Anyway, that was, he learns it different than the way Taisva says. Okay. So, Shnasa Meiser, the year of Meiser. We're saying that the Shana Shlishis is the year of Meiser. So, Shana She'emba Ela Meiser Echad. Why is it calling the year of Meiser? Because we're calling it the year of only one Meiser. That you only have Meiser Rishon, you don't have Meiser Sheni. So it's Hakeitzan. How does this work out? Meiser Rishon or Meiser Ani, you have in the third year, but Meiser Sheni Yivatal. You don't have the Meiser Sheni. Maybe you don't have even the Meiser Rishon. You don't give to the Levi. Maybe you just give to the Ani. It's very interesting because the Levi, in a way, is called an Ani also because he doesn't have an inheritance. So we'll see. But anyway, it says you don't. Maybe what it means is you don't have to give two Meisers. That's what it means. Here you're giving Meiser twice. You give a Meiser Rishon and then Meiser Ani. Maybe you only have to give Meiser Ani. You don't have to give the Meiser Rishon. Maybe. So Talmud Leimar Vel Levim Tedaber. To the Levim you should speak. V'amartalim you should say. When you'll take the Meiser that I've given to you from Benachlasam as your inheritance. Notice they don't have land. What do they have? They get Meiser instead. Hikshu akasav lenachala. This is compared to an inheritance. Ma nachala ein lehefsek. Af Meiser Rishon ein lehefsek. Just like the inheritance is there for the people, and it doesn't stop. It's not like you lose your inheritance every third year or something. So too, the Meiser is there for always. You'll always get that inheritance. There's a strong kasha. What about Shemitah? And the teretz is that in Shemitah you get also, right? Even though there's no Meiser, but you get everything. The land, you walk around the land, it's all ownerless, so you can get that as well. Okay, so
So this opinion that Ani could be the Levium because they don't own it.
yeah.
So this would mean they get all 6 years. They get every year.
Yeah. Where did I see that? I saw that in Rashi. Right.
What are they supposed to eat in the third and sixth year?
Yeah, well, no, the difference, we actually give Meiser Ani in the third and sixth year as well. We just skipped Meiser Sheni. So.
They're not giving to the Levium. The whole country is not giving to the Levium.
Oh, in Shemitah.
Necessarily giving to the Levium in certain years. So what are their
Right,
families eat?
right.
6 year. This would answer the question.
That they're an Ani also, right? In other words, what the Maskanas Gemara is that you do give to the Levium in all 6 years, but in the Havamina we thought that maybe not. So how would they live? The answer is they would get from the Meiser Ani. Just wouldn't be. They would be just together with the other Ani. Yeah, that's what we're asking. We suggested that might be the Meiser Rishon you don't give in the third year. So there's a Havamina that you're not going to give. So Naftali's asking, so what are they going to eat? So the Gemara says, no, you do give Meiser Rishon in the third year. But what would you eat in the Havamina? If that would be the answer is you would get from the Meiser Ani. Now Rashi actually says that in Oy Af Meiser Rishon Yivatal. He says, V'azal it would go Levi Lager Liyasam Almana, and that's Meiser Ani, because the Levi gets together with the Ani because he doesn't have land. So Rashi spells that out. Okay, there's a Tanya Idach or a Tanya Namihachi. We also learned this in a brisa. Besides for what Rabbi Shua ben Levi says, it says Kisachala la'aser v'goimer. The whole pasuk that it says it's the Shnas HaMeiser. Shana Shem Bela Meiser Echad. It's a year that only has one Meiser. Okay, it said, how does this work? Meiser Rishon and Meiser Ani. You have Meiser Rishon and Meiser Ani. That's considered, I guess, one Meiser. A Meiser Sheni Yivatal. And you don't have the Meiser Sheni, which is the tie that would go to Yerushalayim. Yachalaf Meiser Rishon Nami Yivatal. Maybe you also shouldn't have the Meiser Rishon, which goes to the Levi. Talmud Leimer of all Levi says that the Levi comes, calls man Shabbat Tainlai. Whenever he comes, you give them.
Why would you cancel?
We know we're canceling something. We're calling it Shnasa Meiser, that there's only one Meiser.
So you get to choose. Is that what?
So we're saying that it would only go to the Ani. And there was a first Meiser. No, there's
Huh?
He's saying the halacha changes.
yeah, in the third year, the Meiser goes to the Ani. And it reduces the amount of Meisers by saying Shnas HaMeiser. It's the year of Meiser. It means there's only one Meiser. So we're saying which Meiser is dropping. We know we're dropping Meiser Sheni. Are we also dropping Meiser Rishon? So we're saying that Uva HaLevi, because the pasuk says Uva, the Levi comes, that means that he has to always get. You never can take away the Levi's Meiser. Whenever he comes, you have to give him. Here the question would be Shemitah as well, and the answer would be that, well, he gets then as also.
The end of the pasuk says about Levi, Bager, Vayas, and Raman. So any one of them when they come.
Uh-huh.
Skipping out the end of the pasuk.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I have to look it up. There's another pasuk. Yeah, that's what we're saying. No, Levi is asking that Uva HaLevi has more words in that pasuk, which tell us, if you're going to tell me that Uva HaLevi means that the Levi gets always, so no, what it means is that he gets it in the third year as well. That's what it means, which they get in the third year, but the Uva HaLevi, the Levi also gets in the third year. I guess that's the pshat. So Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says, it's not necessary. The pasuk that we quoted before, that is a comparison between the inheritance to the Meiser. There's a comparison to inheritance. Just like the inheritance, when someone gets an inheritance, it lasts, stays with him, doesn't go away every third year. So if Meiser Rishon also the Meiser Rishon stays with him, it's his inheritance, and he doesn't have land, he gets the Meiser. No, it's not a question. And this is in the third year. You see, you can't drop the Meiser Rishon in the third year. That means whenever he comes, well, the first 2 years he comes always, but even in the third year, he gets the Meiser Rishon. Maybe the pshat is he comes. Maybe what it means is he comes to get the Meiser Ani, and you still give him the Meiser Rishon. Maybe that's the pshat. Okay, Ulan Nadarim. We said that the Rosh Hashanah is a Rosh Hashanah for Nadarim. We learned that it was a Rosh Hashanah for Yerek. That meant that the cutoff point of which year it belongs to was Rosh Hashanah. Now it's a Rosh Hashanah for vows. How would it work for a vow? What does it mean? So Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a brisa, if someone takes a vow that he's not going to have benefit from his friend, Lashana, for 1 year. Yeah, I'm just imagining what the story was, but anyway, it says 1 year I'm not eating at your house, and not going to ask you for a loan or anything. So you count 12 months. He took a vow. So the way he keeps his vow is 12 months from day to day. Im amar l'shanazu, if he says for this year, even if it's the 29th of Elul, he says, I'm not going to have benefits from you for this year. So the following day, it's already, you can have benefit. Yeah, we had this in something else. So also, and that's considered a year. Yeah, I was on the plane once. It was January 1st, and the pilot gets on his thing. He says, I want to thank you all for traveling with me. And I just want to share with you that this happens to be my very first flight. And then everyone's like gasping. Yeah, it's of the year. Anyway, this is a full year. It was just one day and it's already the new year. Okay.
So that means that you have that rest of the year to fulfill that vow.
Yeah.
For 1 day.
Yeah, 1 day. For 1 day, he doesn't eat in his house, and he fulfilled the vow. He doesn't have benefits from it. And then Rosh Hashanah, his backies they can have benefit. Now, remember we had a machlokes if it's 30 days or if it's, what was it, Reb Meir and other opinions. So, litzuri nafshei kabbalalei v'hod starlei. Over here, we won't say that. Here, we're going to say that he was just coming to what's it called? Someone that likes to cause himself suffering. A masochist. Masochist. He wants to give himself a little suffering, and he gave himself the suffering, and that's it. We're not going to say that. No, it needs to be 30 days. He already was yaitza. Ve'ima Nisan. That's a good question. Maybe Rosh Hashanah is Nisan. Yeah. Says B'nedarim halachach Hashem b'nei Adam. See, even back then, when we said Rosh Hashanah, we said a year, we meant till Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, that's an interesting sociology, history. I don't know how they put that together. But even back then, that's the way people spoke. When they said the year, they meant until Rosh Hashanah. Okay. Tanan Hassam. Back to...
So why is it from Rosh Hashanah?
Because that's the way people talk. And when it comes to vows, we follow the way people talk, the common language. We follow usage, not proscription, but the description. When the sun comes. Right?
I think what Rennie says, right, it left when it went up, it went away from you because it gets smaller and smaller as it goes up, and now it's like that.
Came down from that specific.
Somebody said, everybody ever said to you, the sun's coming up.
So it's going up now. That the
Excuse
sun's
me,
returning.
Beadle said, here comes the sun.
I think the first Daf of Brachas may be discussing that. What does it mean of Shemesh V'tar? Or maybe that's not. That it could be the first Daf. Okay, Tanan Hassam. We learned over there in the Mishnah in Meisters. Hatilsan. Tilsan is usually translated as fenugreek. It's a spice, a vegetable. It's like a green,
Well, just since you just mentioned the herb, they found, somebody told me yesterday, found a seal, a purple seal with a picture of the Afarsima.
really.
As a seal that they found 2,000 years old.
And Afarsimine. It said on the seal Afarsimine.
Yeah, and there it's a whole big thing like one of the original look-alike.
What is the first one?
Afarsimine is balsam oil.
Yeah.
The Gemara says that it's reichi noidif. It has a smell that you may end up eating from it because it's so good if you use it in the candle. Then there was another problem. The Gemara says that it was volatile. It would like explode on you, so you shouldn't use it either. 2 reasons. One, you may be machabe, and another one is okay. So let's see this Mishnah. It says Hatilsan Misha Titzmach. When is the Meiser? It says when it grows. That's when it's Chayiv and Meiser, once it grows. Now, that's very vague. The Gemara is going to have to explain what does it mean when it grows. I mean, that's It's like, how big is a piece of string? There's no measurement to that until the Gemara is going to define what the Mishnah means. Hatvua va'azesim, grain and olives, mishaviu shlish. That's only when it reaches a third of its growth. A third of its growth, then you're already going to be chayiv in the meiser. Okay, that's which year it's going to go under. You're not chayiv in meiser. That's when it gets categorized by which year is when it's a third. Those are olives and grain. Now the Gemara goes back to explain. My misha titzmach. What did you mean? What did the Mishnah mean when it says when it grows? That's what categorizes it in which year of meiser. The Gemara answers misha titzmach lizroim. Very interesting. When it grows enough that it has the seeds in it. Usually when the seeds in like lettuces, I think it means you let it grow too much. You're supposed to pick it before the seeds. It gets like bitter after that. But right. So once it's but mishatitzmach lezarim, when it's mature enough to have seeds, so then that's the year that it gets categorized under. So in other words, before that, it doesn't get categorized. Let's say it's year 2 and 3. It doesn't get categorized as year 2 until the seeds grow. And the seeds grow, then you have to look which year did the seeds grow. It's in 2 or 3. Okay. Where do you get it from that when it comes to grain, we'll qualify it for which year based on if it grew a third? And the same is for olives. Where's that from? So Amar Ravasi, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Ravasi says name of Rabbi Yechanan. Ravasi is a student of Rabbi Yechanan. And some say that this traces back to Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Amar Kra, it says in the pasuk, Rabbi Yossi Aglili is a friend of Rabbi Akiva. The pasuk says, "Miket sheva shanim b'mayid shnasa shmita b'chag hasukos." In the end of the 7th year, in the holiday, the Shemitah year at the Chag of Sukkos. Now the problem is that Chag of Sukkos would be immediately after the 7th year. The end of the 7th year, at the holiday of at the Chag of Sukkos, Shnasa Shemitah Mayavidite b'Chag Mayavidite b'Chag Sukkos Shminasi. What are you talking about? The year of Shemitah and Chag Sukkos. That's already the 8th year. You could say Miket Sheva Shanim b'Mayed b'Chag Sukkos. At the end of the 7th year on Chag Sukkos, fine. But Miket Sheva Shanim Shnasa Shemitah b'Chag Sukkos, you're making it sound like the Sukkos is on the Shemitah year. Elalei Malach is coming to tell you the following: Kol Tvur Sheviu Shlish B'Shviyas Lefnei Rosh Hashanah Atanoig B'Minig Shviyas B'Shminas. It's coming to tell you that on Sukkos, I have grain that's Shemitah grain. It ripened on Sukkos, but it was a third in the Shemitah year. At the end of the Shemitah year, it grown a third. In the next 2 weeks, it's going to finish its last 2/3. I guess it grows a third a week. And then it's coming to tell us that I can have Shemitah grain on Sukkos. It didn't really tell me like how I know it's a third, but I do know that before it actually ripens, it gets categorized which year it's in. Amali Reb Zera Rabasi. Reb Zera says to Rabasi. Reb Zera came to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel, and he's learning there by Rabbi Yechanan, and Rabasi was a student of Rabbi Yechanan. V'dilma layayel klal. Maybe it didn't ripen at all. Become rachmana tishamet v'tezel ad chag Sukkos. And the Torah is saying that Shemitah lasts until Sukkos. How do you know that it ripened the third and you're telling me that it's part of Shemitah? Maybe you have a brand new halacha. Shemitah extends until Sukkos. Maybe. It responds, don't think like that. The ksiv, the Chag Asif B'Tzeis Hashanah. The holiday of gathering at the end of the year. My Yosef, what does it mean gathering? If you want to tell me it's the holiday when you gather the grain into the house, the pasuk continues and actually tells me it's when you gather. So what are you telling me the holiday of gathering? It must be Elamai Yosef Katzer. It actually means not gathering, but it means harvesting. It's coming to tell me that when you harvest the grain on the holiday, somehow it had grown before and it gets categorized as Shemitah grain. The rabbis established the kol tvush nixra b'chag. If you harvested it on Sukkot, then obviously it had grown a third before Rosh Hashanah, at least a third, right? Or else you wouldn't be able to harvest it 2 weeks later. Because and it's considered.
Isn't that not answering the question? That's not in other words, what's the source for them to know that?
You're about to see the answer to that. Yeah. You're going to be in very good company in a minute. So we know that in this grain would be from the previous year because it grew a third in the previous year. So it'd be Shemitah grain. Amalei Rabbi Yirmiyah le Rabbi Zera. Get ready. Rabbi Yirmiyah asks Rabbi Zera, "B'kimlu l'Rabbanan ben shlish l'pachas mishlish?" I'm not sure if it's exactly a question, but it's very close. Do the rabbis really know the difference between a third and less than a third? I mean, like, how do you know what's a third? Can you tell really that it's a third? You know, like a third.
No such thing as a third, because it's 33.3333. There is no exact point for a third.
Yeah, base 10. Base 9.
Do you think the rabbi
Right.
will base it? Can't believe you gave it. Although
Very
you're
good.
correct.
Amalei, Rabbi Zera responds, this is a classic Gemara. With Rabbi Yirmiyah, everyone's familiar with Rabbi Yirmiyah's style of questioning. Rabbi Yirmiyah asks very he wants to know, he doesn't assume anything. He wants to know, tell me, he asks these questions that everyone already has answered in their assumptions, but he doesn't make any, and he asks these direct questions. Is it this or is it that? The famous question that he had when he was expelled from the yeshiva was, it says if there's a bird that's 50 amas away from the bird house, so then it's ownerless. But if it's within 50 amas, then it belongs to the birdhouse, so you can't take it. So he says, let's say 1 foot was in the 50 amas and 1 foot was out of the 50 amas. So he gets expelled from the yeshiva. Yeah. Just for asking that question, yeah.
But what's the answer?
Wow.
Yeah,
It's a good question.
Base 1.
There's a story. I don't want to take time, but Shraga Feivel Mendelovich was the Tervadas. So he was friendly with the Chabad Chassid. Was called the Malach. Familiar with the Malach? It was Levin. He was a Chassid of the Rebbe Rashab, and he moved to America, and his followers were called Malachim. That's what they were called. It wasn't a little conflict with the Frierdiker Rebbe, so it was like an offshoot of. It wasn't Lubavitch, it was Chabad. But
Malachim like shluchim, like messengers?
no, Malach, like the angel. He was called like the angel. Anyway, he was friendly with Reb Shraga Feivel Mendelovich. They called themselves Mr. Mendelovich. He wore a short jacket. He was very humble person. No external, no chitzainis. Anyway, he's running the yeshiva. He gets tuberculosis. He has to take 6 months off. So he asks his friend, the Malach, if he could take over the yeshiva. The Malach takes over the yeshiva for 6 months. And when Mr. Mendelovich comes back, the Bachrim, there's some Bachrim that have long jackets. And they have long tzitzis that's hanging out from the long jackets. It was exactly the opposite of Reb Shraga Feivel's style. And he wanted to expel them from the yeshiva. He told them, take it off, put on, dress like a mensch, They wouldn't. So he asked the question. There was a Rabbi Boimel in Crown Heights. It was the head of the yeshiva of Crown Heights. Asked him a question, can I expel them from the yeshiva? Based on that they're not listening, they're being more from. So Rabbi Boimel quoted the Gemara where Rabbi Yirmiyah gets expelled for asking annoying questions. He says if they could expel Rabbi Yirmiyah for asking annoying questions, you can send them out of the yeshiva for not listening to the whatever. Anyway, okay, so let's go. Amalei. So he says, Lavamina lach Rab Zeir responds to Rabbi Yirmiyah, did I not tell you? Leitepik nafshach labar mi hilchasa. Don't mix in how's the exact translation? Don't question. Don't question the expertise of the sages when it comes to halacha. Kol midas chachamim kenu. The sages always said this. There's always a measurement. Barboim so toivel, that it takes 40 sa, he goes to the mikvah. Barboim so chasakut vein yachalit ben. Then you can't go in 40 sa in less than 40 sa.
So in other words, it's always a question: how do you know?
Right? You'll always ask. There's always a line that makes it past the line is not okay. And we give a bunch of examples. Kabeya mitami t'masaychlin. Kabeya chaser shumshim ena mitami t'masaychlin. If it's a size of an egg, then it gives off tuma, and if it's less a sesame seed, less than an egg, doesn't give off the tuma. Shleisha mitami medrash, a garment that's 3 by 3 tefachim is tummy medrash. If someone that's tummy sits on it, okay, that's what he's telling him. So they know basically when it grew a third. The examples are and the mikveh, which could be tumantar as well. Do we have time to go further? Yeah, let's go further. Hadar Amar Rab Yirmiyah then said, Lav milsi damri de boimine chavraya mirav kana. I think it means Lav milsihi. The way we explained it is not correct. Why? Because the friends of Rav Kana asked Rav Kana, was the early Rav Kana, must be the student of Rav that came to Eretz Yisrael. What day did they come into Eretz Yisrael after 40 years of the desert? They came in on the 10th of Nisan, right? Is that what it says? Came in on the Im Taimar, the Ayil. So the question is now, where did they get grain to bring the Aymer? It says that after Pesach, they ate from the new grain. How would they eat from the new grain? They needed to bring the Aymer. Where did they get the grain from? So Im Taimar, the Ayil Biad Nachri, maybe you'll say that they got from a non-Jew that was there in Eretz Yisrael. You have to harvest it. Can't get it from a non-Jew. How do you know that they brought it? Maybe they didn't bring the Aymer. It says, you can't say that. Diksiv, Vayoichlu me'avor ha'aretz mimachras ha'pesach. Mimachras ha'pesach achol mi'ikara lo yachol. Da'krivu Aymer v'hadi achli. It says right after Pesach they ate. And obviously they brought the Aymer and then they ate. Mehecha nekrivu, where did they bring it then? Amar lehen, Rav Kana responded to them, Kol shlei hevi shlish biad nachri. If it didn't grow a third in the hands of the nachri, and it grew a third, and it completed the third in the hands of the Jew, then that would be acceptable. V'dilma ayel v'leikim lehu. What is this? Maybe there was it grew entirely. Maybe it wasn't a third. Maybe it grew the full thing.
No, maybe it was already a third by the guy. If that's what he said. In other words, he's clarified this question earlier.
Oh, the Dilma Ayel, maybe the Kimlahu means maybe they didn't know. Ela Kimlahu, obviously they could tell. Oh, that's what it means. Dilma Ayel Kimlahu, maybe they couldn't tell. It says no, obviously they could tell. So Chanami Kimlahu, obviously they can tell when it's a third. They were able to tell. Dilma Layayel Klal, maybe it didn't grow at all. Maybe it didn't grow at all, but if it would have grown a quarter or a sixth, they wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. So it says, don't say that. That they came up from the Yarden on the 10th of the month. If you're going to tell me that it didn't grow at all, could it grow fully in 5 days? It must be that it was already grown a quarter or a sixth. And that's it. It finished. Danke is a sixth. And it completed itself to a third in those 5 days. The Gemara says, "Akati b'chamishi yem mikamalia." Would it grow that much in just 5 days? Elamayas lach lameimar. What are you going to tell me? Eretz tzvi. It's a land that's as fast as a deer. It produces so quickly. Ksivba. So achinami eretz tzvi ksivba. So maybe it grew the whole thing as an eretz tzvi. Okay. Taisvis over here. It's a very interesting historical conversation. It says that Rabbi Avram Ibn Ezra asks Rabbeinu Tam, Mimachras HaPesach is not Mimachras Chag HaMatzos. It says they ate from the grain, Mimachras HaPesach. That means they ate from the grain on the 15th. Mimachras Chag HaMatzos would have mean, we call it Mimachras HaShabbos. It would have been the 16th. And the Omer is the 16th. She's asking an Ibn Ezra style question to Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam gives this answer. But anyway, I didn't realize that the Ibn Ezra and Rabbeinu Tam would have this dialogue. Okay.
Wasn't it in Spain?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Well, where's Rabbeinu Tam? In
France, right?
in France, probably. Or Lines or something. Yeah, Rabbeinu Tam was stabbed by the Crusaders, right? They left him for dead. And yeah, okay. Only good things.
Thank you.
Okay.